What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We continue to go position by position, getting you ready, getting ourselves ready, just getting juiced up for this college football season, this Miami Hurricanes team. No more time passing the days, talking about guys getting crystal balls. We're focused on the team. The team is going to take the field against the Florida Gators and the various positions. We already talked quarterback, already talked running back. You can check those in the archives. Remember, like and subscribe to this podcast if you want to check those out. Today, we are talking about the wide receiver position. I feel like every day is a position that Miami's been historically great at. Quarterback you, running back you, and of course, wide receiver. Multiple Hall of Famers, including Andre Johnson, who just went in, Reggie Wayne knocking on the door. Miami's trying to get back to that kind of room. 2000, you had Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss, Andre Johnson, one room, pretty good. Miami's working towards there, not there yet, but getting closer than they've been in the past. First, I want to talk about some folks that are always reliable, just like a Xavier Restrepo, and that is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. So, Pete, hop in. A lot to talk about here at the receiver position. With quarterback and running back, there were a lot of kind of new names to talk about at the top of the bill with Cam Ward, obviously one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country at Washington State. David Martinez, one of the most productive running backs in the country at Oregon State. Wide receiver, you're still talking about guys that are highly productive, highly ranked in the UNCAA football video game, stars of college football. But in this case, they are homegrown talents at the top of the ticket, plus some new additions from the portal and the recruiting class.
Yeah, obviously we're huge fans of Restrepo and what he brings to the table. And I think last year when there was that whole discussion if he was going to leave, if he was going to stay, and there were some fans who were pretty much insinuating Miami might be better off without him, they were completely off base there. And we've gone through that, plenty of times here on the CanesInSight podcast. So obviously it starts there with Restrepo. Jacobe George has been great to see his steady ascension, knowing the talent that he is, continuing to become more consistent, and need to see that even more on the field this year. But really, I think last year finally saw what we had been talking about in terms of glimpses of that in practice. And, we saw it in games, but put it together on the field last year. Has to avoid the stupid penalties. But then to me, a guy that I've been harping on for a while as one of the biggest pickups of the offseason is Sam Brown, because he brings you a completely different element to the table there. And again, like I said, with the running back room and Damian Martinez being a legit NFL prospect, hearing the same thing with Sam Brown. Has the size, has the physicals in terms of the leaping ability, is going to be a 4-4, potentially mid to low 4-4 guy. And we see what he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch, that's the big difference between him and some of these other guys, Restrepo and Jacobe George in particular. And look, we'll get through the list of all these guys, but Sam Brown was a huge pickup this offseason to me.
No question about it. And let's talk first with the guys that are outgoing, right? Before we talk about who's coming in, who's coming back. Colby Young off to Georgia, of course. Go to a program like Georgia, that means you did something good on the field for Miami. Stats don't pop out necessarily like Restrepo, like Jacobe George, 47 catches, 563 yards, 5 touchdowns. But it's the role, which we'll talk about in a second. Brashard Smith, 22 catches, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns. Of course, had the long touchdown run against Clemson. It's the role. Brashard Smith, a guy that could take the handoff, really a running back playing receiver, gadget kind of guy. Colby Young, the big body guy who can go up and get those 50-50 balls. Both these guys made big plays against Clemson, in fact. But they all had their defined role. I think that's what you're trying to replace more so than the production with those two. They had some production. I think you have more production coming back. But who's going to be the guy in the red zone that can go and box people out and high point the football? Colby Young did that. He's going to do that for Georgia. Had a pretty good spring for them. And of course, Brashard Smith had his particular skill set, which you saw in the Clemson game. Probably didn't see as much of Brashard Smith as maybe others thought you should. Certainly he thought you should. That's why he transferred to SMU, as ACC opponent now. But I think there are people in the room who can fill some of these roles, and we'll talk about them. But first, you got to start at the top. Look, Cam Ward, one of the best, the NCAA video game. It's like people listen to this who don't play video games, and I'm not like a huge gamer myself, 39 years old. But when I say like this guy's rated this guy's rated that, I think that's a good reflection of what the nation thinks about our players. We're on here every day. We live and breathe this stuff. We're on the Canes Inside message boards, 6.9 million posts and counting. Sign up if you want to talk Canes, but we're living and breathing it. So sometimes it's important to take a step back and say, how do other people view our players? Restrepo is a very hotly debated player. People always think he's getting too many, not everybody, but some people think he's getting too many targets or whatever, criticisms, which I think are quite frankly absurd. I've gone on rants in the past. But what do other people think about our players? Cam Ward, 89 ranked, one of the top ranked players in college football in the video game. Dave Martinez in the 90s, right? He's a 90, at running back. Xavier Restrepo. What did the national people who put together the ratings for this video game rank him? 90, one of the best receivers in the country. I say that to mean that's how the world views him. So we should view him the same way. Certainly I do. The criticism with him, Tyler Van Dyke targeted him too much. Of course, Shakari Brown targeted him 17 times in the Pinstripe Bowl when he got his chance, and Cam Ward targeted him a bunch in the spring game. I've gone on that rant already. Here are the stats. 85 catches, 1,092 yards, 6 touchdowns. And one thing I want to emphasize with Restrepo, and Pete, you have some insight on this I want to kick to you in a second. We naturally put him in the category of a Braxton Berrios. Any kind of like, white or Hispanic slot receiver that's under 6 feet tall is going to be compared to Xavier Restrepo. I get it. And he does have a lot of catches. He does have the ability to separate and rack up those receptions because he can separate so quickly, so quarterback friendly, all those things. What I think makes Restrepo different is he played last season in the 210s. Okay. He is a big, strong player. He's not long, he's short, but he is big and strong. That helps him after the catch. It helps him separating, and it helps him even make contested catches, which we've seen him do at times, despite being a shorter player. So I think the fact that he's really a running back body playing a receiver is undersold when we talk about Xavier Restrepo.
Yeah, and I've said it on the show a couple times before, but what you're alluding to is I had a couple scouts last year during the season tell me that he might be a running back at the next level, which is, it's an interesting comment because, like you said, you look at him as a guy who's just getting open all the time, making the catch, and that's it. But that's really, it's a lot more to it. He's a guy who breaks tackles. He has, just seeing him physically, he has the size, he has the strength, right? And I'm not saying I agree with that assessment. Obviously, he does a great job as a receiver at Miami, but that's what they're thinking at the next level potentially for him. You've talked about it before. He's not necessarily a dynamic returner, which doesn't help his case, but at the college level, he's Mr. Reliable, the quarterback's best friend, right? He definitely fits those boxes there, but he's a guy who is bigger than what you'd expect at that spot.
Yeah, and I talked to somebody with the program about Restrepo as a punt returner, and they're going to challenge him to really win that job this year. He hasn't shown to this point that he is anywhere near, for example, a Braxton Berrios as a returner. Braxton Berrios, an all-pro returner in the NFL. But there's no reason why he can't be a similar player. He has the ball skills. Obviously, you see it as a receiver. He's extremely high IQ, high academic, both football-wise and off the field. Didn't always show in his punt return decision-making, but that can be fixed. But he has the ball skills. He has the IQ. And when he has the ball, he's strong. He can make a couple guys miss. And he's not going to be Santana Moss, Phillip Buchanan scoring 60-yard touchdowns, Devin Hester, Roscoe Parrish, some of the guys we've had. But neither was Braxton Berrios, certainly not in Miami, but he's still always ranked highly in the nation because if it was there, he'd get what was there to be gotten, and he wouldn't take these stupid plays where he hurt you as a punt returner. He would fair catch it. People thought he fair catched it too much, but we always ended up better on the field position side. Restrepo has the ability to be that. It'll help his pro prospects. It'll help the team. It'll help him be a more complete player. And I'm told reliably that there's folks in the building challenging him to be that player.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. And again, another guy who comes back with something in his mind to prove, because if not, he would have gone to the next level already. Obviously, anyone has a chance to transfer, so he could have done that as well. But a guy who comes back trying to improve his draft stock and set himself up for the next level here.
One last thing on Restrepo before we move on. He had great stats last year, 85 catches, 1,092 yards. I'm not sure he's going to replicate those numbers. He can, but he has a lot of competition for catches now. He did last year, but now you get a Sam Brown in the mix, Isaiah Horton emerging, Jacobe George emerging. There's a lot of guys, including all the young guys we'll get to. One area where I think you'll see improvement from him, that's 6 touchdowns that he has there. I think you're going to see that number go up because in the red zone, I saw it all spring with Cam Ward. He looked for him in the red zone because he has that 210-pound size where he can break a tackle and score. He's so smart. He can get open, and he's reliable. So I think you don't usually think of a 5'9" guy as your red zone target. I think with the way Cam Ward plays and the way he sees the field, he's going to find Restrepo, and Restrepo is going to get open. And I think Restrepo is going to go from that 6 touchdown range to something closer to the double digits with Cam Ward at quarterback.
Next up here, another returning player, Jacobe George, who had his best season as a Hurricane by the numbers last year. And he's a big play threat down the field, your classic South Florida receiver who has the ability to create separation, get open, and make some things happen with the ball in his hands. But you continue to see every year him getting better. Exciting to see what he could do this year, potentially with a Cam Ward.
Yeah, 57 catches, 864 yards, 8 touchdowns. Actually, the second leading returning receiver in the ACC behind Xavier Restrepo, both guys on the same team. That excites you. With Jacobe George, to me, he is one of the ultimate make or break players on this offense because we saw some of the low moments. We saw the Pinstripe Bowl, some of the decision making that, I'm sure he's not happy about, the coaches weren't happy about, the fans weren't happy about. That can't happen. However, I think this guy fits like a glove with what Cam Ward does best. What Jacobe George does best, he is a natural tracker of the football. He is a smooth route runner, but really on those 50-50 balls, you saw it against FSU. Guys were crashing into each other trying to find the ball. He finds it perfectly and goes in for a big touchdown. He just has an incredible ability to locate the ball, to go up and get it. He did it in high school as well. For a guy that's not huge, he is just unbelievable on those 50-50 balls because of his ability to see it. And Cam Ward, what does he do best? He throws those 50-50 balls, I did 50 twice, 3 times, 50-50 balls to where only the receiver can make a play. You saw that repeatedly with Kyle Williams and some of the other receivers in Washington State. Put him with Jacobe George, and I think you're going to see some of those fade balls, some of those balls that, it looks like it's up for grabs, but it's going towards the sideline, allowing a receiver like Jacobe George who can see it to fade at the last moment and make a big play. It happened all spring. It happened all over Cam Ward's tape. If you watch him at Washington State, just watch his highlights. You'll see it repeatedly, and just replace Kyle Williams with Jacobe George, who did that same thing here at Miami. And I think it's a match made in heaven with the ultimate 50-50 ball thrower, the ultimate 50-50 ball tracker and catcher, and a guy who has incredible amount of talent. And he's not satisfied with being a late round pick. He wants to be a high round pick, one of the leading receivers in the country. And I think he has the ability to do that with this quarterback as a senior.
Sam Brown out of Houston coming in, a guy that we talked about in the beginning here, someone who familiar with Shannon Dawson and his offense, obviously having played under him when Coach Dawson was at Houston. And I talked about what he brings to the table, but to me, I think he's really someone who can unlock this offense in a sense because of the big playability. And I think a lot of mismatches will be created with him because, look, both Restrepo and George are great in their own right, and they're going to play their roles. But I just think from a physical standpoint, you have to have certain guys on your roster who can match up with Sam Brown. And I don't know if everyone that Miami faces is going to have that.
No, and I think, like you said, they all bring different flavors. A lot of people say you want your receiving core to look like a basketball team, different body types, different skills. Restrepo, he's the guy that's going to get open short, who's going to read the quarterback's eyes, going to find the soft spot in the zone, going to catch the ball, going to break a tackle, going to be that guy for you to rack up catches. Jacobe George, we just talked about, 50-50 balls, tracking the ball down the field, making big plays that way. He is going to do that for you. What Sam Brown brings to the table is a superstar athlete, 6'2", 195, elite long jumper in high school, very good basketball player in high school, laser 4.45 while he was in high school. Watch the Texas film. You see him making them look terrible. That's one of the best teams in the country, and he is making them look terrible. He has that ability as an athlete. Short passes, he is going to tear teams apart if they give him some space, because that is where he flourishes. Use his athletic ability. He can go deep. He can make plays on the ball as well. But I think really where you're going to see Sam Brown flourish is the ability to take short passes and turn them into long gains, like he did against Texas, like he did against many teams in the Big 12. He was one of the leading receivers in the Big 12 all year. 62 catches, 815 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was reported that he had a second-round grade, at least from one NFL person that 247 talked to. I spoke to sources when he jumped in the portal, and I told you guys on the podcast before anybody heard about Sam Brown. We were talking about him on Canes Insight, talked to him about Canes Connection, which, by the way, we have a Canes Connection call on Thursday. So sign up, promo code CIS for Canes Connection, join Miami's official NIL collective, and you'll be on that private call next Thursday. Canes Connection, promo code CIS, 20% off your first month, the official collective of the Miami Hurricanes. I'll have a call giving non-public direct insider information in a private setting to everybody else, make everybody else an insider, make everybody else a booster, jump on that call. But anyways, in a call like that, like the one we're going to have on Thursday, I told everybody about Sam Brown. It was the first time anyone ever heard about Sam Brown. That's the insider access you get as a Canes Connection member. But point being, when I said that, I said, look, I'm totally the top 100 pick. Now it's being backed up by other sources like 247. So you look at the physical traits, you look at the pedigree, you look at the production in the Big 12, and you look at what people are saying about him in the NFL level. This is a big-time player and a different look than what you get with the Restrepo, with the Jacobe George.
Well, and how significant is that that you talked about a top 100 pick potentially, and I've heard the same thing. That's I've been saying also, since the springtime when Miami was after him. But to me, it's like that's no small piece of information talking about the lack, excuse me, I had a D-Money voice crack there, but the lack of high-end receiver talent in terms of NFL talent, that position for Miami recently. So like we go back and KJ Osborne has had recent success. Philip Dorsett was a first-round pick, but I mean, there hasn't been that. Who am I missing, D, in terms of draft picks, right? Stacey Coley was a late-round pick. So it just hasn't been there. Yeah, Braxton Berrios has had, has turned himself into a really good player at the next level. But you're talking about late round picks there, D, and you're talking about Dorsett was a first round pick, didn't exactly, blow the doors off the NFL. He's still playing, so you give him credit. He still made his way there. But again, that's why I really think this could be a game-changing type player, a season-changing type player for Miami next year.
No question about it. And look, you talk about production. The top 2 returning receivers in the ACC in terms of production was Restrepo and Jacobe George. One of the more productive receivers in the Big 12 was Sam Brown. And we even gotten to the fourth guy who, to me, watching practice, talking to people, could be the breakout star of the receiving corps, and that is Isaiah Horton out of Tennessee. You heard Cam Ward say this guy was a breakout candidate. You saw him last year against Texas A&M, beat them deep, make a 50-plus yard touchdown catch that broke that game open. But when you watched him in spring, he changed his number. And I was asking, who is this NFL player that we just put on the practice field? And it was Isaiah Horton wearing the new number, that number 2. He looked like a pro physically. We interviewed him on the podcast. He presented himself like a professional. And when you watched him in spring, it wasn't just the deep ball, which he can do. I mean, his post route running, he was killing our first team consistently. But that's not all he could do. You saw deep crosses. You saw shallow crosses. You saw the ability to run after catch for a guy who's 6'4", 205. He does have some of that to his game. He can get upfield. And just the maturity and the consistency he brought to the table in spring. They're not going to be 4th receivers, 4 teams that have this kind of talent. FSU is looking for 1 receiver that can get it done. When you have 3 guys that are as productive as the 3 we've gone through, and then your 4th is Isaiah Horton, Miami has an extraordinary opportunity to really punish the weak spots of opposing secondaries with a guy like Isaiah Horton.
Well, and look, I'm not saying he's the same player as him, because Colby Young was the go up and get it red zone guy, on third downs as well, made a lot of big catches, 50-50 balls, like you said. And I don't know if Horton is there with that side of the game just yet, but hypothetically, you would think that he would be the big bodied receiver, quote unquote, of this group.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That's going to be the question with Horton is, can he be that high pointer, right? That goes up and gets it, that boxes people out, that is the red zone threat. he's been much more of a big play guy. Even in this spring, which was a breakout spring for him, he was more of a big play guy than necessarily that Jacobe Young role.
Well, I just showed a clip of him getting a screen against North Carolina last year. So I mean, they, like you said, it's not just the deep ball or the fade with him.
Yeah, he can do a lot after the catch. Again, down the field, there's a lot that you can do with an Isaiah Horton.
Moving along here, D, some exciting. We'll get to the newcomers in a second, but it almost feels like Ray Joseph and Robbie Washington are newcomers, although they've been here a year. I think it was a year for both of those guys. We'll start with Ray to get their feet wet. Ray was a guy who had not really played running back, or he had not played receiver his entire career, right? Played a lot of running back coming up, and at Edison wasn't always asked to run the full route tree, so to speak. So with Ray, a guy that we understand his work ethic and, you know, coming in from the jump and putting his head down and doing what he was supposed to do, and Coach Cristobal shouting him out in, you know, media scrums and things of that nature. What sort of step did you see from Ray in the spring, and can he be one of these X factors, one of these weapons, kind of like how Rashard Smith was for Miami, where he had a gadget role? Could he be that for this team?
Yeah, first of all, one of the best Canes Connection interviews we ever had, right? He was amazing, super smart, super engaging kid. But in terms of role, you mentioned it, Rashard Smith, that role needs to be replaced. I think Ray Joseph is the perfect guy to play that role. He was also a running back coming up, somebody who's becoming a receiver. I think he actually has more, you know, he's further along with his hands than Rashard was and just being a receiver, but that's where he's trying to get better. But with the ball in his hands, that's where he flourishes. He's low to the ground. He's strong. He can break tackles. He's fast. He's quick. I think the Rashard Smith role and the returner role that Rashard Smith also had fits Ray Joseph like a glove. Eventually, you want him to be the Restrepo, where he's your slot receiver. But in the meantime, I think you get the ball to him fast and let him run after the catch. That's where he's going to really, really flourish.
Do you see him as a guy involved in the return game as well, D?
Yeah, I think so. He could be your punt returner. He could be your kickoff returner. He has enough strength for that role. But that's something he did in high school at a super high level. I think he can do it in the college game. But again, you got to see it, right? This is one of those things where it's hard to replicate returns in practice. You didn't see him do a ton. You had Rashard Smith last year. I'd like to see him this year more involved in the return game.
The next guy from the same class as Ray Joseph, Robbie Washington. And D, one of the more interesting statements I found from Coach Cristobal during the spring this year was, and again, we all know how Coach Cristobal is. He says certain things in the media because he means it, and he's not going to say certain things if he doesn't mean it. So Robbie Washington was someone that he said was ready to help Miami win football games this season, which, from what I understand, and I think we've talked about it before, he had some growing up to do, and part of that was why he, you know, wasn't on the field. Not just has nothing to do with necessarily off the field, but just becoming because they're essentially pros now, and becoming pros, you know, day in, day out. The talent level is there for Robbie Washington. But for me, that was a huge statement because it says that he's taken that next step that Coach Cristobal and the staff was looking for.
Yeah, watching him on the treadmill there, these guys can fly. With Robbie Washington, kind of similar to Ray Joseph as far as running back playing receiver. He's most deadly with the ball in his hands. He can help you on those Rashard Smith plays, those end arounds. He can help you as a returner. But he was playing a little corner to start spring, and a lot of people, myself included, think that might be where his most upside is. I still probably think that's the case because he's just so special there with his movement skills. But I wonder if that lit a fire under him, because after that practice, he was just play after play at wide receiver, mostly with the backups, but making a lot of big plays, catching runs. He had some drops, he had some mistakes, but when he made big plays, they were big plays. He would usually score touchdowns because of his speed and because of just that playmaking flair that he brings to the table. So he's someone I put in the same category as Ray Joseph. Get the ball in his hands fast, and he can make something happen. Probably has more speed than Ray Joseph, I would say. Just more just explosive and ability to pull away from guys. Whereas Ray Joseph probably more, he has speed too, but he's more of your short area kind of guy. Robbie Washington, big play speed, a lot of long touchdowns from Judd Anderson, Shakari Browns of the world, more of those backups, but that's where he really made some plays. I think he can play with the first team. He has strength. It's going to be about role, and I think the Rashard Smith role, just like it suits Ray Joseph as a returner and a player, also suits Robbie Washington for the same reasons.
And another guy who really, I mean, you got to give him credit in terms of he's always been the man, growing up at Killian, at Palmetto, and it's always an adjustment as a receiver in particular. That's one of those spots where it's, sometimes as an offensive lineman, defensive lineman, you get yourself in the mix, but you're used to not touching the football, right? As a receiver, as the guy, I know that was probably a big adjustment for him. And again, it seems like he's taken those steps that he's needed to take, and excited about what he could potentially bring here for this offense. Now, the true freshman here, Nikar, JoJo Trader, both of them coming in as big recruits here. JoJo Trader locally from Chaminade, Nikar out of Georgia area, former UGA commit. Both of these guys showed flashes during spring, but I know Nikar in particular for you was a big star during spring practice.
Yeah, and I think it's good that we're talking about all four of these guys together, meaning Ray Joseph, Robbie Washington, JoJo Trader, Nikar. I think they're fighting a little bit for some playing time, some healthy competition with these players. But when you talk about Nikar, for example, and JoJo Trader, with Robbie Washington and Ray, we're talking about get the ball in their hands and let them move. I think it's similar with these other two that they have that in their bag, but I think they're more advanced as receivers. All 4-star players, but these two are higher rated 4-star players. I think it's because of what they do as receivers, the ability to move, the ability to run routes, the ability to change speeds. These guys are getting deep consistently in practice. Nikar particularly, just very, very productive at the wide receiver position. You look at his high school stats. What do you have? 64 catches, 1,261 yards, 21 touchdowns in Georgia. Georgia commit, was flipped by the Hurricanes. So this is someone who's very productive in high school as a wide receiver, and then has done nothing but make plays since he landed on Green Tree.
Yeah, and you see some of the stuff here from high school as well. Verified speed, from him. So he's a guy that I think without a doubt, the speed will get him on the field early, but you saw the catch that he made in the spring game there, the reception from Ja'Cory Brown, had the dive, made a nice catch with his hands there. So, and at least one of the practices I was at media-wise, I saw Coach Kevin Beard really taking him aside, and you could tell, listen, coaches are always coaching no matter what, but you can tell that Kevin Beard really thinks this guy has a chance to be special.
Yeah, and you mentioned the speed. What you showed was GPS, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he's like a track guy. I couldn't find any track times for him. He's a football speed kind of guy, but he has a lot of that football speed. I mean, he's getting deep. Both, he's making big plays on screens and he's making big plays down the field. But it's just the consistent playmaking at receiver. Some guys just have a knack. You can't explain it. This guy was making plays short. He was making plays long. He was making plays inside the numbers. He was making plays outside the numbers. He was making plays on screens. He was making plays on deep balls. He is just a wide receiver that is going to find a way to produce. He's not an athlete. I mean, he's very athletic, but he's not an athlete playing receiver. He's not a running back playing receiver. This dude is a pure playmaker at the wide receiver position, and I think that's what separates him from guys that maybe had the physical attributes but didn't consistently put it together in high school, in the practice field, and ultimately in the college games.
And then the other freshman here in the class that we're going to talk about, JoJo Trader, of course, out of Chaminade, one of the top receivers in the country. And he also had a chance to go through spring practice, and a guy who, from all accounts, is only going to keep getting better.
Yeah, with JoJo Trader, I think similar to Nikar, he can take a short pass and take it a distance. He can go deep. What jumps out to me with JoJo is the smoothness of which he does everything, changing speeds, similar to Jacobe George in that way, but more athletic. He's also a big-handed guy like Jacobe George, can make spectacular one-handed catches and all that stuff. When I saw him in person, he was very lanky. You could tell he just had a lot of room to grow in his frame. And just knowing, just sort of about his path, he reminds me of DJ Ivey, in that DJ Ivey, when he got on campus, was skinny, lanky. He had athletic traits, but he wasn't like tearing up the stopwatch. I think he was like 4'7" in high school. Ended up being a physical monster that got drafted in the NFL based on his physical traits and ended up playing as a rookie for the Cincinnati Bengals on defense. So to go from a guy who's maybe underdeveloped to a guy who's getting drafted on their traits, there's a lot of weight room development there. There's a lot of training table. There's a lot of cafeteria development there, just eating, being consistent there. And I think JoJo Trader reminds me of Ivy in that his body will look a lot different when he starts practice than when he first got here. And just talking to sources around the program about the summer, they said JoJo Trader, I mean, he was good in spring. This guy was making plays every practice. They said over the summer, his body's just gotten different. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten sturdier. He's gotten faster, more explosive. And he's always been a smooth, athlete and all those kind of things. So put the strength and conditioning aspect, put the nutrition aspect. This is a guy who was getting first team reps in the spring game. Watch the spring game and you'll see him getting passes from Cam Ward. He was playing with the first team at times. So if he has a jump in the summer based on what I'm hearing to be the case, he could be someone who plays right away at receiver. It's a deep position, but he's ranked that way. That's his pedigree. And the buzz about him in the summer is outstanding. And of course, this guy made a lot of plays in spring as well.
And then we'll wrap it up here with Shamar Kirk, a guy who was a Hurricane last year coming from the JUCO ranks, but consistently made plays during spring D from what you'd been talking about. I had a chance to see him play basketball recently, and you can just tell guys moving around out there, what they've got a little bit, and the body control was impressive. And he was a real player out there, which again doesn't make him a great wide receiver, but he was very coordinated out there, which not all football players getting out on the basketball courts have that coordination at receiver. Very impressive.
Listen, if someone only went to the scrimmages and the spring game and some of the team stuff, they'd be like, why is Shamar Kirk, why is number 83 not playing more? Because he consistently made big plays in team settings, and you saw it in the spring game with a long catch as well. So this is somebody who, it was very interesting to hear what you said about him in basketball court, because you see some of the athleticism on the field. I don't know what's keeping him from playing more, because he is making big plays in scrimmages. I think just the consistency maybe a little bit with him, and really some of the talent that we've talked about here. But he's someone that's going to be interesting to watch. If he can be consistent, not just showing those big plays in the scrimmages with the third team, but pushing with the first team and making plays. Really, I realize as I go through this, I've kind of given you the bright sides of all these players, just to kind of leave you with some things to work on real quick on some of these guys. Restrepo, the punt return. Jacobe George, consistency, maturity, same things. He's improved, but are not there yet, as we saw in the bowl. Sam Brown, using his size, not just being a run after catch guy, but a guy that can make contested catches, give you some of that ability. Isaiah Horton, similar guy that can use his strength and size more to high point the ball and make those Kobe Young plays. Ray Joseph, catching the ball more consistently, being more of a polished receiver. Robbie Washington, overall maturity and similar to Ray Joseph, becoming more of a receiver as opposed to just an athlete running back. Nye Carr and JoJo Trader, both just kind of physical growth and consistency just because they're so young, but stacking days in the offseason. And then Shamar Kirk, maybe some of the polish as a receiver. This is a guy who was really a run after catch threat in high school, in junior college, came to Miami, didn't play that much, polishing up his game and just being consistent, where the quarterback, a Cam Ward, can know where he's going to be and find him consistently because of his route running. Yeah, it's a position you go almost 3 waves deep at, potentially D, which is a great thing, but we have to see who's going to emerge now during fall camp. A lot of that gets figured out now in the next month or so leading up to the season. So excited to see how everything plays out, but I think they have the weapons there for sure. And look, if you want to get that Xavier Restrepo jersey, caneswear.com and Caneswear and Davey, they got that Xavier Restrepo merchandise. Brett, the whole team, outstanding when you go out there in person. They got the TVs, they got gear stacked on top of gear, and of course, Xavier Restrepo jersey or anything else you want to support this position, this team. It's the summer still. They got bathing suits, coolers, koozies, you name it. They got it at Caneswear and Caneswear.com, the spot where Miami Hurricane fans shop. All right, remember to like this video and subscribe to the CanesInSight channel as we get you geared up here for the season, going position by position. And of course, as any news breaks, we will bring it to you. Stay locked on CanesInsight.com. Check out the forums, completely free to sign up if you have not done that already. Go Canes. Go Canes.
Yeah, This an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.